course. Go ahead.
So, great talk from at least Mohammed. I didn't hear the other one, so I'm pretty sure it was very relevant. Sorry for being late. I think that a lot of the themes and the things that are happening today, and I echo a lot of things that Mohammed was saying in terms of how we're going to become more curators and maybe go outside this micro attention to interactions and small like things that can be definitely automated or at least I won't say replaced, but it will take the load out of us to think about these things because things will definitely be let's say enhanced or accelerated. So today what I'm going to talk about is using GenAI, and here while a lot of the examples are going to be focused on one of the tools, I think you can look at agnostically at all chat UI or chatbot, chat GTPs and so on and so forth, and we can look at it agnostically. But I want to start with like just a brief introduction about myself. I'm a designer by trade, but these days I consider myself more of a person who asks a lot of questions and almost annoyingly in meetings asking why are we doing this? What's the value we're trying to achieve? How are we going to create, deliver, and capture the value from giving out this experiences to people? Mostly workshops and stuff like that I do. But yeah, I have roughly 15 years of experience. I've seen a little bit of everything. And I'm seeing as well with GenAI, something that I saw maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago with mobile devices. But if we look at a very typical human-centric approach, call it design thinking, 4Ds, whatever we're going to call it, there are three fundamental stages. This shouldn't be unfamiliar to any of us. So empathizing, understanding the situation, trying to define the problem space. Then we go on to exploring what is the solution space, essentially, trying to figure out what is the best thing that fits into solving the problem that we're trying to solve. And then it's about materializing those ideas into something that makes sense, it's usable, it's desirable as well for customers or for users. And every single of these stages or phases, there's a lot of things that we do. Like from understand point of view, we have customer interviews, we have user research, secondary research, market analysis, and so on and so forth. Exploration, ideation, competitive analysis, so many other things that we have to think about when we're trying to explore what is going to be the ultimate solution for the problem space that we're trying to find. And then materializing is most of let's say the work that is visible by us designers, which is essentially doing UI designs. You can go to design systems, error screens, all variations and edge cases, hand over to development, hand over our demos to stakeholders, trying to bring everyone on the what is that we're trying to deliver. And one thing that I've been noticing is with this like overemphasis on design to do a lot of these things, it becomes somewhat repetitive. Some of the tasks that we do can become somewhat repetitive. We know in the understand phase, like I said, we do interviews, we do maybe secondary research, and the secondary research usually looks at what's the company's kind of goal, vision, mission, what is the trends that we're seeing in the market, and so on and so forth. I'm going to talk about what I think is going to happen, and it is already happening. It's not happening at mass scale, but I'm starting to see it. The tool that Mohammed was just showing is evidence of that as well, which is if we look at our normal approach as a traditional approach, the value proposition that GenAI and AI accelerated opportunity gives us is to achieve almost the same level of clarity and certainty and risk, lowering risk at a very much accelerated pace. Because we're going to be relying and using AI to do a lot of the work that we do today manually, but it will be automated by them. And I'm going to give you a few examples in the whole spectrum of, let's say, design and the human-centric approach, where we start with strategy and trying to get insights, and then we go to ideation and delivery, and then launch. And we have all of these things that we have to take into consideration. These are the things that usually happen on below. These are the things that usually happen, some of the work that we need to do, right? So we have to do research that can be done now synthetically. So using synthetic data from real people that used real products and gave real feedback. But now it's used in a way that we can simulate environments from people and behaviors for people and so on and so forth. Because even though every one of us is different, we have very similar behaviors. When we look at competitive analysis or SWOT or Python analysis, SWOT and Python, not usually more from a business point of view, but SWOT, I think we do a lot of the times when we do competitive analysis. Okay. So I'll stay here. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. And then going into, let's say, synthetic personas, synthetic user journeys, and idea generation. Usually we go to a workshop, we have a session. Let's go and generate ideas about this problem space. So it's 5, maybe 6 people kind of generating a few ideas. The value proposition of GenAI is like, what if we give almost the same problem space to GenAI, which has large language models of information that we will never have in our brains? What sort of ideas it comes with, like outside of the box, that usually would be low-hanging fruits for us. That's the value proposition I think that GenAI is going to augment, accelerate, and help us do more, quicker, faster, and I would even say better. And then on delivery and launch, like things such as Copilot coding, like we saw at GitHub, video generation. Every day or almost every week we see new tools being able to generate fake videos or synthetic videos from other videos. So it's really mind-boggling. And then messaging strategy, campaign design, even copywriting. And I'm not saying like here, creative copywriting, but yeah, GenAI can do really good copywriting. And I'll show you now a few examples. So when we are in the strategy phase, when we have to do market research. So market research essentially is trying to understand how the company is operating today, what does the landscape looks like, and we can ask it in a prompt way, in a very specific way that we design a prompt to do a market analysis in such a way that it gives me information in this format. And people who actually do like everyday market research, they're not changing the ways that they're doing market research that often. Like it's very repetitive work. They go and study they might go to a financial report of the company, look at the information, extract the numbers, understand what is going to be like the strategies for the next year and so on and so forth. But we can't extract all that information, format it in such a way that we have all the, let's say, categories that we can use in order to establish a point of view of how that company is and how it's positioned against the trends in the market, for instance. And yeah, value proposition of what it offers, what are the channels of distribution, like how it makes money and so on and so forth. These are all things we can ask a question and it gives all the answers very quickly. This is going to be very controversial, being a designer, and having done research myself many, many times. I look at research as a way to establish or help establish a point of view of how users or how people think and might react in a certain way. It informs us in terms of what are the conditions they're in, what are the likelihood of the problems based on contextual, let's say, experience from them, problems that they face. But in order for research to be statistically relevant, that we are catering to the entire needs of the target market, it's almost impossible to interview, let's say, if we're targeting like 1 million people, to interview 1 million people, just to really make sure that we're getting all the information that we need. Of course, doing research is the ability for us to just to try to put ourselves in the situation of the client or the customer or the user and try to think of ways of how we can improve their lives. My experimentation with synthetic personas has been very similar to a certain degree to the level of research that most people actually do, which is they might interview maybe 5 to 10 people, ask a few questions, and they will have a very generic or very holistic and very generalized verbatims or, let's say, information from customers. The upside or the flip side of synthetic personas essentially is it's going onto the internet, scouring for hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of verbatims and information from customers in a very particular segmentation. Imagine having access to every single research paper or research activity from everyone ever made. That's what it does, essentially. Of course, not every large language model has that access, but even the access that it has, the synthetic personas that are created are quite good to establish just the first point of view, just to understand how these people might react in this situation. And of course, like it's not just asking a question. The way, like, and this is something that I've built myself, a GPT called Innovation for Personas, which follows a very specific like format of trying to find what are the needs, what are the pain points, and what are the game creators, and which is essentially the jobs to be done framework. So it gives me a very good idea of who these people might be, for me to establish a point of view of what are the problems, what are the things I need to do. And again, like, it gives me the functional jobs. So if you know jobs to be done framework, it has functional jobs, social jobs, emotional jobs, what are things people are trying to achieve. And then they talk about what are the pain points associated to each one of them. Now, what I'm saying is, it's not about replacing research with this. What I'm saying is that our first step in trying to ask more intelligent questions or be better positioned into what is exactly what we don't know outside of what we can scour the internet with, what are the actual questions and actual things that we need to know that we don't know yet from asking to real customers or real people. And what I found is, if we're looking at creating or innovating where there's not yet a product or a service being used by people, this here is more than enough for you to start with creating a proof of concept or an MVP that you then test with real people, because then you have a product, right? If you already have a product and you're optimizing and enhancing, don't use this at all. Talk with your real customers, because those are the ones using your product. Those are the ones who are experiencing things, and these are the ones you should be taking into consideration, not possible information, possible data. But if you're in an innovation space in the 0 to 1 market this year, just for you to establish a point of view and launch something to the market very quickly, this is enough. Like, this is more than enough. Again, from ideation, like I said before, how does ideation normally start? Usually starts with yourself, based on your understanding of the information. You get some ideas, you start formulating those ideas, and then, okay, let's do a workshop session. Everyone goes to a boardroom, or everyone goes to Miro or FigJam, plug it in. And you start posting post-its about what are the ideas that of this, how might we, what ideas are coming through. But imagine if you have like this that you give it some sort of constraint, saying like, I've used like solution ideation brainstorming with GPT a lot. And the way that I say is like, imagine you're in 2030 or 2035. The company reached this outcome, which is the outcome that I'm trying to create. What are the ideas that took us there, kind of thing? Like imagine what if scenarios. And GPT is very good because it's with, let's say, I'm not going to say creative tasks, but things that the hallucination actually is a nice thing. It actually helps. So it's very good for that. But then again, it's not replacing our own ideas. It's just enhancing more ideas into the table. Again, this might be controversial as well, but I've been playing with this a little bit. Imagine that you have the ability to create some sort of a prompt that enables you to get 80% of the usability issues that exist in an interface, which are usually the same. Either the colors are off, or the accessibility of the information, readability of the information is not right. Maybe the inconsistency of buttons and so on and so forth is not right. So actually, I don't want to say that Mohammed's product actually does a lot of this stuff. But as well, like if you say that if you follow the heuristics, let's say rules or guidelines, and you say give me a score of this screen based on those heuristics, it does a pretty decent job. It doesn't tell you what is actually wrong. It just tells you or how to do it, how to like solve the problem. But it gives you the symptom of, hey, this might be wrong based on this, my analysis of this interface. This is not quite right. And this is the score that it gives. And you can take it and then go to Figma and start making some adjustments. Even like sending multiple screens and asking to compare all the screens based on usability standards and so on and so forth. You can do the same. Another controversial thing. Imagine you're designing, right? You're designing empty screens, error messages, and you're like usually, most of the times you go to lorem ipsum, like, okay, I'm not gonna write an error message here. I'm gonna send it, someone else is gonna do that. I'm not like bothered. It does for you, done. And you can even ask it for the tone. You can give it some brand guidelines on how your copy brand looks like. You can say easily as, I'm designing a user sign up, forgot password, and login flows. Like what are the error screens or the error messages and warning messages that I need to consider, and give me the copy for that. And it does that for you. Like it's that almost easy. So there's today almost like no excuses for us to focus our time in things that really, really matter, which is figuring out how can we create value for people who are going to use our product. And also through the product or through the experiences, how are we going to deliver that value? And also through the product, how are we going to capture that value? These are the most fundamental things that we as designers, I think we have to consider all the time when designing experiences for people. It's like, are we really creating value for them? And then is the product built in a way that is capturing that value in the most efficient way possible? And is it being delivered in the most efficient way possible? And it's a sneak peek of the stuff that I have to offer you. My call to action for you is, if you're not experimenting and not thinking about, if I'm doing this every day, or I create some sort of an excuse in my own head to not explore or not do anything with GenAI because either I don't care and I don't think it's going to replace me, or I don't think it's going to change it, you should start playing with it for sure. Like you should start trying to understand in what ways can I integrate these tools into my day-to-day work, or even my life, my personal life. These things are it's my own opinion, this is going to change fundamentally, like how we're going to do things in 5 years from now. I think what we think today, in 5 years from now, and anyone that tells you like these things are dumb and are never going to do what we do, I'm curious and very excited. I'm not scared. I'm excited of what these things are going to be able to provide us. And I think just to close off a little bit of thought is that maybe until now, a lot of us have a lot of ideas, right? We're not short of ideas. The problem that we face today is that who executes those ideas? Who delivers those ideas? So it's people like us who other people rely on to make those ideas happen, right? Deliver, like developers, designers, QAs, and so on, copywriters, and so on and so forth. I believe with the automation of certain things, like being like GenAI and AI, having the ability to execute on those ideas, what we're gonna have, what we're not gonna have short of are executed ideas. So we're gonna have so much innovation in a very short amount of time. I think what we're going, and this is something that I agree with what Mohammed said, is what we're gonna have, our jobs are going to be, how are all these ideas work together? We're going to be thinking more in a system way rather than an isolated way, in a product or like a screen or a service, but more thinking about how all of these products and services are going to be integrated to be part of one person's life. I think that's going to be the next paradigm of the things that we have to figure out. Because if we look at a business and all the pieces that make a business together, most of the time it's like separate Legos. Like they work on their own, but if we fit them together, it's very broken. Like it doesn't look nice. But now with this advent of like being able to produce so many ideas, now we have to look at the entire thing. We have to take 2 steps back and seeing the micro to seeing the macro. But anyway, the idea of this is like to accelerate as much as possible and to make things as much as possible from taking high risk stuff and unknown to as quickly as possible to the known and possibly the low risk, saying like, is this a really good bet for us to bet on, or it's a crap idea? We need to kind of like rub it and put it to the trash and not spend time with. Because one of the things that happens today is experimentation is slow, takes too much time, and it's taking too much money to execute the right ideas. So we need to be better at quickly identifying the ideas that are worth it from the ones that are not. And GenAI, I believe GenAI is going to enable us to do that very, very fast. And I think that's a really cool idea. That's it. Short and sweet.
Thank you so much, Carlos. It was amazing. And from people at home, in case you want to expose some questions, you can use the Q&A. So I will start. And then eventually you can share some of your questions. While you are thinking about your questions, we have a special Q&A. So I will show you. We basically prepared 3 questions and we asked ChatGPT what he would think about these questions, basically. So we even asked for the questions to the ChatGPT. So this will be like an exception. So basically the first one was what are the ethical considerations in using AI-driven design tools and how we can ensure these tools are used responsibly? Because I think this is also a topic that usually came off. I think it was a good example when I saw on the internet an image with multiple people that were black, and then he was filtering as being a dog or something like that. So it was a very good topic that I found it interesting, and so I brought it here. And basically what he said is that he basically had to ensure fairness and mitigating bias. So basically, the responsible use to combat this it's essential to use diverse and represented data sets and implement robust bias detection. So I think this is still a topic, in my humble opinion, that it needs a lot of work in, because even though that the data from these tools might seem equal, for us humans, it's not to social constructions that we have. Then he said that we should maintain transparency and accountability. So eventually he says something here like, to opaque nature of AI decisions and obscure how and why certain things, design choices are made, complying accountability. So this is also very interesting. And then he said, protecting privacy and data security. I think this is also another one that it's still very polemic, like where he will go get the data and regarding RGPD. So I think this is one is interesting. I'm not sure if one of the speakers has some opinion on this, and in case you have, go for it. Have you ever thought about it? Maybe Mohammed or Carlos or everyone from actually from home, you can chat what you think about this topic. Do you?
I can go.
Yeah.
I don't mind.
You can go here.
Yeah, I'll
Sorry.
go there because of the microphone. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Like this is one of the things I actually kind of like talked about in a previous presentation about the risks of using AI, Gen AI. The majority of data comes from developed countries, right? And when we look at developed countries, we look mostly Europe and maybe, not maybe, but North America, and some bits and bobs all over the world. But who is generating the most data? That's fundamentally like it's geographically like pinpointing to some directions. So if most LLMs are trained on westernized data, then we can definitely assume that most of the information coming from those LLMs are going to be westernized information, right? There's many studies out there. Like if you ask for, give me a picture of a nurse, it's going to give you a white female. If you ask, give me an image of a janitor, it's going to give you maybe an African American or a Spanish person and a male. If you ask to give me an image of a doctor, it's going to give you a white male. So these things are there. And I think depending on the situation and the things that we are working on, we have to be mindful of, let's create mechanisms to counteract those biases that exist. And definitely protecting privacy and data security, 100%. Deepfakes is something that exists, and more, like I'm not sure if you saw a few videos of people experimenting on themselves, like giving them a lot of footage of themselves speaking, and they can have one-on-one conversations with themselves. So if that is possible, then we can create a version of me or a version of you, and I can do whatever I want with it because the information is there. So this is something that we have to be acutely aware of. And as we develop these tools that use GenAI and AI, we also have to counteract with measures of how do we protect and guarantee that this information is actually true or real. So I think it's an interesting challenge, and definitely something that will impact the way that we say things in the future, for sure. Mohammed, I'm not sure if you have anything to say. Okay,
I think maybe you're mute. Not sure.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, I was on mute. I was just saying, yeah, I think that was a great answer, Carlos. I'll just add by saying, I think what we can do as a next step is to provide users with more controls over their data, specifically opting in to certain models. And I think this is actually something that has not been done yet with the race, that these LLM companies seem to be having. For example, Slack released their new model, but it looks like from their privacy policy that you actually have to write into them to opt out of their global model, and you actually cannot opt out of their local model. So giving more controls to users to have more control over their data would be a good next step.
Thank you so much. Then we also ask, what are the limitations of the current UI technologies in product design, and how we might these limitations be overcome in the future? So what he said is that eventually we have limited creativity and innovation because current AI often struggles to break free from existing patterns in data. Then he said inadequate understanding of the user needs. I think this one might be polemic. And then difficulty in integrating multidisciplinary knowledge, which I think, depending on the version that you have on ChatGPT, probably it's not that difficult, perhaps. So I think this is also interesting. For instance, here, when he said inadequate understanding, AI can miss the subtle and nuanced needs of the users, leading to designs that may be technically proficient but not user-friendly. This is also interesting, but if in case it works, how that cannot be user-friendly, so I think it's polemic. And then product design requires a blend of knowledge from various fields, such as engineering, marketing, and ergonomics, which current AI systems struggle to integrate. Probably, as Carlos was mentioned, maybe in 5 years, this will be easy peasy for ChatGPT to integrate, perhaps. Yeah. And last but not least, just a cliche, but I think it's a good one. What is the question about AI that people might be afraid to ask? So, will AI take away our jobs? I think this is the most frequent one. Can we trust AI to make ethical decisions? And is AI going to suppress human intelligence and become uncontrollable? So I think we have a lot of American movies to think about this last one. But I think as we talk a lot today, I think it's up to us, and I think we still control all of these three dilemmas at least. I think it really depends on us, and just to be smarter and use it as a tool and not as an enemy, basically. Not sure if one of the speakers has something to say or to share regarding this cliche or the other one. Yeah, my 2 cents. But
Yeah, maybe I can just add on on the previous point. Sorry,
yeah, yeah, this
the
one.
second one. Just something that popped out to me is the word nuance, and
Mm-hmm.
also integrating multidisciplinary knowledge. I think what this is getting at is the challenge of understanding context.
Mm-hmm.
Um, LLMs are really good at understanding context in text, language. But when you're looking at designs, the context can really change. We have this term, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And
Yeah,
I think that's the case because a picture can have many different contexts, depending on what it is. For example, a button on a website can have a very different context and purpose than a button on a help menu, for example. And so part of the challenge is to interpret what is the right context depending on the design asset, and from that infer the respective nuance or the knowledge. So that's my 2 cents on this one.
yeah, I agreed.
2 cents on the other one for me is, like, I would add another question, which I think tells us a lot about us as human beings. But the question I would ask is, will we ever be in a position where we're going to make decisions only with the use of AI? So we won't be able to make decisions without consulting AI. And I think that's, for me, it's a very, very interesting thing to think about, which I believe it's going to be true.
It's a good one. Great. And just to give you an extra bonus for those who don't know, don't use much FigJam and don't know, you can explore a little bit the Jambot on Figma Jam, which is basically connected to the ChatGPT. So, for instance, this is just a silly example. Okay, I hope that in your real job you have more demanding situations. But let's say that I need recipes that use tomato, and if I go on 88, eventually he will create post-its of those recipes, and then eventually similar stuff, and then eventually he will give me another recipes based on this one. And then as you can see, this is dynamic, so we will go and then quick question, and I can just do is balsamic good? I don't know, something like this. And then eventually he said balsamic and reductant. So he will give you an answer. Probably is balsamic good? It will be not a good one to make, but you can even teach me about this, and then he will give you all the information about balsamic. So as you can see, you have multiple functionalities. For instance, summarize or rewrite this, let's say, as an email to my boss. Let's see what he does. So as you can see, you can also explore this as a first step in case you don't. So yeah, this is an email for your boss regarding balsamic. But as you can see, for those who didn't try at all using ChatGPT or whatever, I think you can go here and just experiment chatbot for multiple situations. You go here and you just put chatbot, and then you basically stick a post-it, and then you choose whatever you need. You even have things regarding code, but to be honest, don't know, but you should explore it for sure. So you can even write it. And I think it has great potential for newbies or first tryers of GenAI. So I think that's it for today. Does anyone at home wants to say something? So far, so good, I believe. Okay, then I think we can finish. Thank you so much for our speakers. It was amazing content and very inspiration. And also thank you to Bliss for having here the event and also share their progress on AI. And thank you all for joining us today on this Friday afternoon instead of going to see Taylor Swift. And thank you so much, and I will see you on the next events. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.